Right, we've started the recorder going, so officially we're open for business. Shelanu Nasaya Hakzara, our journey of restoration. Abba took a huge risk when he took his children on an extended camping trip. And it wasn't glamping, that's for sure. Through the wilderness. How many parents look forward to taking their children on camping trips?
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Where do I plug my computer in? We were just talking about it then. People don't use computers anymore. Most of the email messages I got, it's got sent from my iPhone. Most people just do everything from their phone now, not from a computer. So he took a huge risk. Again, it's people talk about millions of millions, but probably you're talking about 300,000 altogether of all the different tribes. They've calculated what it would have been, even with the mixed multitudes. It was still probably been about 300,000 or something. If the 3 million that some people talk about were there, some people would still be leaving Egypt at the time when they reached the Promised Land. So he took them on an extended camping trip in the wilderness. He penciled them into an already busy schedule and spent 40 years teaching them survival skills, how to cook exciting new dishes, and spent quality time with them, living alongside them in a tent, the Mishkan, or the dwelling place, the Ohel Moed, or the tent of meeting, which is often mistranslated as the tabernacle, which is actually taken from the Roman tabernaculum. And the tabernaculum was actually a ritual portable shrine for their statues. So it was not a tabernaculum. It was an Ohel Moed, or the Mishkan, the tent of meeting, and the place where his presence was there with a cloud over it. Again, the portable shrine is taken from the same root as taberna, and taberna means shop or tavern. So, when he took him on the camping trip, did he risk rejection? Of course he did. It's a risk we all take when we offer genuine, unconditional love. Abba has created each one of us as a sort of portable mishkan. We're all, as was prayed just today, we're all portable mishkans. He wants His presence to dwell. He wants His Shekinah to be visible over our lives. It's a place where He can meet with us heart to heart and guide us hand in hand through life's journey. From our old wilderness to His promised land. Our booth or tent of meeting with Him on a daily basis as we travel together. Most people are still dwelling in Egypt, or wandering around aimlessly in religious circles through a spiritual wilderness. Yes, some have actually made it as far as the outer courts, but only trusting children in a full daily relationship with Abba can enter the Holy of Holies. The place of complete covenant relationship. The place where we can fully experience His shalom that He gives, not as the world gives. His place of shalom, His rest, His perfect ahava, His unconditional love. So many people still see Him as a remote, distant, hard taskmaster. It's interesting, there's a record, when I first heard it, I thought, it's quite nice. And Cliff Richard, it's called From a Distance. And the more I listened to it, the more I thought, he's totally missed the mark. He's not from a distance, he's hands-on. So do you see Him as a remote, distant, hard taskmaster? Or are you free to say to Him, I love you with all my heart, and with all my soul, and with all my strength? Can you say to Him, I will follow you anywhere, anytime, and in any capacity that you tell me? If you're not able to do those things, you may still be wandering in the wilderness. Or maybe you're in the outer court performing duties and tasks for Him, but not necessarily with Him. When you perform tasks with Him, you do it in the Holy of Holies. If you're doing things for Him, you're still in the outer court. Remember, it's His will be done, not ours. So stop trying to tell Him when, how and what we want. When, how and what we want Him to do for us and for other people. And start asking Him what He wants us to do. Obedience is better than sacrifice. As we contemplate Messiah's return, we need to show that obedience by shouting out, by raising our voice like a shofar, by preparing a way in the wilderness for Yahweh as we make straight paths for people to reach Him, by straightening winding roads and smoothing the rough ways with the truth. Why? Because He wants all humanity to freely see and receive redemption, to all find a way back home. He's promised to prepare a place for us, a place to be with Him when He returns. And in return, all He asks for us is to prepare an open superhighway to enable a reunion with us and as many other of His children as possible. I have a solid, clear vision for the future. I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the spiritual view of the promised land from the mountaintop of prophecy. A place that's ready and waiting to receive thousands upon thousands who are crying out. To thousands upon thousands who are thirsting in the valley of decision. And the thousands and thousands are crying out. Ask Him to make the decision to repent and receive the promised gift of redemption and reconciliation with their heavenly Abba, their Father. I see the same thousands upon thousands preparing and building up the straight, smooth, narrow path to make a way where there has been no way for those crying out for answers, crying out for the truth. And you'd be surprised, a lot of the people that you see out there think are completely ignoring Him. They're not, they're self-medicating. They're crying out for the truth, they're crying out for answers. They've been rejected, they've been lied to, they've been all sorts of different things. And so, if they can't find that, then they self-medicate to dull the pain. But believe me, they're seeking answers. But a lot of them are cynical. They've been inoculated. So they've got a few antibodies in there, but they haven't got a relationship with the nurse.
He's American and he's old. And he said, I've got my casket, I'm all ready to jump into it.
You should have turned and said, where they're taking it. On the river Styx. But this is it. A lot of people have got to that stage where they have this standard thing that they say to everybody. I used to have it before I got redeemed. I never ever got to question 3, but I had 3 questions and I knew that the first one would stop them dead in their tracks. And if that didn't do it and they were really persistent, number 2 usually did. I never got to number 3. And that was my defence mechanism. Because I didn't want to hear all the rubbish, because I'd seen religion, I'd seen what things were like, and I saw through it. It was a load of rubbish and I didn't want to know.
Could you tell us what the first question might have been?
I can't remember now, but it was a good one. I'll have to try and remember them and write them down.
You make us curious and then confident.
Yes.
Come back next week, same time, same place.
Religion, don't you think religion always causes war? That's what people say.
But I remember it was a fairly simple one. If somebody had a real relationship with them, they would have known the answer. There was something, it was a college lecture or something. No, it was something else. And basically, this person asked this difficult question. And the guy just turned around to him and said, if I answered you, would it make a difference to your life? It's not about the questions, it's not about the head knowledge. It's about a heart transaction. They're crying out for the truth that will release them and set them free from the darkness that they stumble through on a daily basis. Truth that will open their eyes and ears and remove the heavy loads that they stagger to carry. I see a vast mixed multitude of misguided prodigals as they finally make their way back home along the road to restoration. I see a feast to end all feasts being prepared by their Abba. A feast to celebrate his sons and his daughters' return from death to life. And that's the only difference between us and those that are out there still. They're still prodigals. They're out there writing their testimonies right now. But they need to start coming back home. They need to get so much of the pigsty that they decide it's time to come home. But most of all, I see two distinct but absolutely interconnected bodies rise up as breath is prophesied and breathed into their nostrils. The first of these interconnected bodies is Israel, whose dry bones came back together as promised with flesh, ligaments and skin in 1948. As the wandering outcasts, the wandering prodigals were welcomed back again into their own land as a fully restored nation. Even though the unfolding of this process is still ongoing as the next phase moves towards completion. The time when Yahweh restores his nefesh, his breath, his rakadesh, his spirit of truth upon them, when he breathes into their nostrils and they become spiritual Israel and not just physical Israel. Because as Torah says, their minds were made stone-like. For to this day the same veil remains over them when they read Torah, because it has not yet been unveiled. Because only by accepting their kinsman Redeemer, their returning Messiah, will the veil be taken away. That's the bottom line. And it says so in his word. It's by reading Torah, by recognizing and accepting their kinsman Redeemer, the veil will be taken away. Because it says, yes, still today, whenever Moshe is read, a veil lies over their heart. But, says the Torah, when someone turns to Yahweh, the veil is taken away. And of course, Yahweh in this text means the Derech, his spirit. And where the spirit of Yahweh is, there is complete freedom. So all of us with faces unveiled see only as a reflection in a mirror. The Shekinah, the light, the glory, the presence of the Lord as we're being changed step by step into his very image or character. From one degree of glory to the next by Yahweh's Spirit. As Jeremiah says, "For this is the covenant that I will complete with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my Torah within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their Elohim and they will continue to be my people. No longer will any of them need to constantly teach his fellow Kehilat or community member or his brothers by saying, 'Know Yahweh,' for everyone will know me, from the least or first of them to the greatest or the last of them. Because I will forgive their rebellion and forgive and remember their sins no more." And that's the process he goes through with us all of the time. When he says that he forgives our sins and remembers no more, he means it. Even at times when we can't. And we say, "Oh yeah, I've forgiven them." And then we keep getting these thoughts coming back, and these thoughts coming back, and we think, "Oh, maybe not completely." But sometimes you have to forgive on the basis of it's the right thing to do. And it takes a while for your feelings to catch up. The second of these two interconnected bodies is the full restoration of his messianic body. A process that gained momentum in 1967 as Jerusalem was recaptured and started the process of the spiritual dry bones coming together again. The Jewish half and the Gentile half. The flesh and the ligament has started to come together and the flesh is starting to form. But the two halves are still not yet fully joined together because each half is still ignoring the other half and don't even recognise the need to fulfill and complete Yahweh's plan of restoration. And until they do, the wounds cannot and will not heal. And without unconditional forgiveness and healing, the body will never fully function. because they refuse to be obedient by reconciling and supporting and building one another up in love for the equipping of the Talmudim. Breath cannot and will not enter in to anoint and unite these two disjointed parts of one single united body until that reconciliation takes place. Then and only then can the wounds finally heal and close up. Because until the wounds heal and close up, you can't cover it with skin. It won't be recognised as a body. The wounds have to heal. And once the skin's on there, then the breath can be breathed into the nostrils of the body. And the skin will cover and protect the parts where the centuries of the multiple open wounds of misunderstanding, rejection, persecution, unforgiveness and prejudice have been. And believe me, there's some very deep and very open wounds that need healing. But it'll take both sides for that healing to take place.
What's Talmudim?
Talmudim, the pupils, followers. Yeah. Talmud is the follower. So he had his Talmud, the 12 Talmud. And between them they became the Talmudim. And then the 72 and the rest, yeah. Anything like that, if you don't understand the word and everything else, just feel free to ask.
So without them humbling themselves, they'll never have forgiveness. Without them humbling themselves, they'll never get forgiveness. No.
Both sides will need to humble themselves. And both sides have been hurt, and both sides have been rejected. And so they both sort of, we are the bridge. Basically, people say, well, what are you doing? Are you this Jewish thing? No. We happen to be in a favoured position where we know both sides. They don't know each other, and we found ourselves in this position many times with people where we've known some people, and then we've known some other people, and eventually we've been able to introduce them to each other and have become best friends. That's basically the process he wants. I can relate to people on the Gentile side because my father was Gentile. I can relate to people on the Jewish side because my mother was Jewish. So Pamela and I are Jew and Gentile, so we can bring people together. We can be the bridge that helps them to understand each other. I understand both sides. We're not here to criticise either side. We're here to bring healing. We're here to be a bridge that brings the two sides together and even just gets them talking. Just bringing them together to talk is going to be a major.
So what do we call us? What do we call us?
What do we call
So
it?
I remember being Gentile way back and then becoming...
Well, at the moment they use the term Messianic believers, but you see, a lot of Jewish people will turn and say, but I'm a Messianic believer, I'm waiting for the Messiah. The only difference is I'm waiting from the first time, you're waiting from the second time.
Yeah, so, we were doctrine followers.
This is why I've moved towards the one new man.
Yeah.
Because that's what he says we will be. When Jew and Gentile come together, we will be... Why? There's never been such a thing as a Jew-Gentile. Well, there is now, because I'm one. But what it means is, in other words, you become something that's never existed before. You become a new man. It's something new. It's something that just hasn't been there.
And again, he's Talmudim.
So, either side is going to ignore us unless they see us doing what we say.
Yeah, he says they will know you have love for one another. And I know my Jewish friends cannot have love until they know Messiah. And I certainly know I struggle to have love in all sorts of situations.
Yeah.
That's what Messiah says.
Yeah.
It seems. But if you're in Israel, you can't be mixing with the Muslims. It's too dangerous.
Yeah. One of the things you often hear when Yaakov Damkani and other people go on the streets of Jerusalem is, for centuries you've hated us, for centuries you've said you hate us, and now you come to us and say you love us, we don't trust you, we don't believe you. It's a trick.
I always asking if someone, like some Mormons came to my house or Jehovah's Witnesses, I always asking, they say that they are the Jews. I said, okay, how many Jews you got among? See, the first church they started, they were born again Jew and plus Gentile.
Yes.
So this is a good question.
Yes.
What are Jews? Of course, no, they don't have a Jew because for Jews this is strange. So I like to see here that we got Gentiles, and Jews together in Messiah. And you got the opposite, you got Gentile church, or you got the synagogues. But of course there is no Gentiles there because
There's no Czechoslovakians here. There's no South Africans here. There's no English here. There's no whatever here. All there is one new man. So Jew, Gentile comes under the same category. We're human beings. We're who we are, and we've come together in Him. So my identity is in Him.
I know that from having part Jewish and my mother's mother was Jewish, that I had a more intense calling than what I felt before.
Oh yeah. But it has to be on both sides. And again, a lot of people come here, they don't know why they're coming here. Then they eventually find out that there is some Jewish heritage. And there's just something in the DNA and the genes that attracts them to it. But that's not why we're here. We're not here to make... In the first century, the big question was, and it's in Scripture, was how can a Gentile be part of this? Now, we have a situation where the bodies turn around and say, how can Jews be part of this? It's turned around completely. And what I say is, why can't we just come together like He asks us to, love one another, forgive one another, and just be the one new man whose identity is in Him?
But you know, we have this problem staring us in the face all the time. The Christian church wants to take control.
All religious things want to take control. It makes no difference what side. Religion likes to take control.
Can I tell a story?
Yeah.
This is a really nice story. My husband is in South America and Argentina, and to the synagogue. When the Pope got elected, we weren't, but when the Pope got elected, everyone was absolutely excited. There were a lot of Jews in Argentina. In fact, I've forgotten what his name was before he was Pope Francis.
The Polish guy, yeah.
His best friend is a rabbi of their church. Synagogue.
Yeah.
The rabbi is his best friend. They got to be friends over soccer.
Yeah.
And he attended a Jewish festival in the synagogue there. He's a very humble man. And of course, Argentina's got a problem with the government. So everybody's united against the government.
Yeah.
This is really nice. So when it got elected to the Pope, all the Jewish people in Argentina were just thrilled. Because they know he's a humble, lovely man. And his life, he shows it through his life.
Yes.
So don't despair. God's working on his purpose.
Oh, yes.
I believe it. And in ways we never would have thought that. And it's only because she's not coming that she told me, otherwise I wouldn't know. And it's really if we know really well when it comes to festival and so on. And when he did the trip to Israel fairly recently, it wasn't that long ago, and he took his rabbi family with him. Oh, wow. Not everybody knows that.
Great.
So God's looking at his way. We don't need trouble. I don't think we need to be troubled over that.
That's right.
No.
But this is what I've said. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. Whenever I say something, if it's critical, it's about the system. It's about the principalities and powers behind that system. Not the people. People are people. We've all been one thing and now we're another. No use criticising people in the church. I was in the church. I was one of the leadership of the church. So we've all been different places. We've all learned new things. We're not here to criticise people, but we are here to expose the systems and what the systems do, and to expose the truth of it. If you want to understand the Quran, do you read it in German?
No.
If you want to understand the Quran, you read it in Arabic, and you talk to Arabic people because they understand the context it comes from and everything else. If you want to understand God's Word, you have to understand it from a Jewish perspective. It's as simple as that. It's not a prejudice thing one way or the other. It's just a simple fact. You cannot understand what's being said in here unless you understand the Jewish background and the meanings behind it and the mistranslations of some of the words.
So put it this way, it's like Jane Goodall. Like she didn't understand chimpanzees until she actually
lived with them. Exactly. And we've found that before when we were part of the deaf community when we were over in the UK. It wasn't until we were fully immersed into a place where we had to learn how to communicate with them because they had no way of communicating with us. And we had to learn sign language. We had to understand their culture. And they have got a separate culture and they're very proud of it. And we had to understand these things and we had to learn these things. And boy, did we learn a lot. And lots of times where we did things and they laughed at us. And they're very direct. You won't get them trying to be subtle. If they want to tell you something, they'll tell you something straight down the middle. I was eating food in that way of the schmooze time one time, and this woman came up to him. She went, and so Pamela turned around and looked at me. She said, "Greedy pig." There's nothing subtle about it.
This was Jeffrey's name.
Oh yeah, they give you a signing name, and mine was this. And this was long before I knew anything about my Jewish heritage. We kept going like that, and Pamela asked them.
What does it mean? It's Jew.
Jew.
And
I had no idea at that stage.
Mine was like that. I said, what's that? And you're
Smiley face.
smiling. You're always smiling.
So, but again, it's refreshing sometimes being in an open, honest community where everybody's straight with you. There's no middle ground.
I just want to ask a question here. Is it relevant that the Gentile church understands the Torah, we'll say the Bible from a Jewish point of view? Because I just don't think it's possible. I actually met a chap who had a senior job in a church, and he was Jewish. And so he was saying, yeah, well, we're going to get the Bible school, we're told. Well, you've got to think of things from a Jewish point of view. He understood it, but in reality, there's no way he would ever be able to do that.
No.
And the other thing too is that it's good to know these things never grasp to interest. Salvation has to be very, very simple in context, so that everybody can understand. It's simple, but it's also very, very, very profound.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Just listening to them saying, well, it's good to have these faces, but it's not mandatory. It's not relevant to salvation.
No, but again, you don't understand the process of salvation until you understand the kinsman redeemer principle. When you understand the kinsman redeemer, and it suddenly makes sense of all the things he's been saying. It doesn't mean you have to become Jewish or think Jewish. It just means you need to understand what he's saying and in what context he's saying it.
But last I want to say this, that the Gentile church has a real problem.
Yes.
Because I feel that justification, the doctrine of justification is very, very important. But if I were to preach that in a Gentile church, the moment you start talking about the Jewish law or Torah, and you look at it, and the eyes begin to glaze over. So I'll say, it's good to know these. It develops your faith, but salvation has to be simple. Well, as I say, you can understand the word, but actually understand what salvation is.
That's why we're doing things like this Feast of Tabernacles in Bethlehem. The reason we're doing things like that is to bring it down to a level that people can start to understand and see the truth.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and this is what we're trying to be. You're never going to be relevant to everybody, but you need to at least explain the truth to them and then let them discover it for themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I'm never going to talk somebody into the kingdom. I'm never going to persuade somebody. All I can do is speak the truth and let the Derech HaKodesh do the rest.
Most people will see it. A lot of people, regardless of what you say to them, they will just see it as some Jewish holiday.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to say that in the churches, if 10 people come into the church and each says, I'm the Messiah, one of them says, well, they're going to make mistakes because they're not the Messiah. And if you know Torah, you pick it up straight away. But you don't get saved by that.
No.
Okay.
You don't get saved by that. You get saved because you know that you know that you know. You don't have this burden of sin. You don't know what to do,
As we've got a 3-pager, I'll carry on. Yeshayahu prophesies Yahweh's words. Here is the sort of fast I want. To release those unjustly bound or controlled, to untie the cutting thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed or the slaves go free, to break every yoke or separation, and to share your food with the hungry, both spiritual and the third world deprived. To take the homeless poor into the house, the Keilah. To clothe the naked when you see them, redemption. Fulfill your duty to your kinsmen, all believers. Then your light or truth will burst forth like the morning. Your new skin will quickly grow over your healed wound, and your righteousness or redemption will precede you. And Yahweh's glory, His presence will follow you. Then you will call and Yahweh will answer. You will cry and He will say, here I am. If you remove the yoke from among you by stopping all false accusation and slander, replacement theology, etc., to generously offer food to the hungry, spiritual and physical, and meet the needs of the person in trouble, sin, then your reflected light will rise in the darkness. A darkness of ignorance, prejudice, falsehood, man-made traditions, etc. And your gloom will become like the noon, Yahweh's light of hope at the end of the tunnel. It's not a train coming the other way. Didn't Yeshua make His intentions absolutely clear when He prayed for us? His Talmud to be one as He and the Father are one. One complete, fully healed, new man with Him as the head. Therefore, isn't it our job to expose the multitudes of man-made artificial lookalikes, plagued by replacement theology, superstition, lies, hate, ignorance and division? They must be exposed and removed so that they can no longer play an active part in the smoke screen that confuses and hides the real process. It's a process that's all about individuals looking to Yahweh and Yahweh alone. Not looking to men to bring them together into full unity as His Talmudim, His followers. Because just like Nehemiah, our task isn't open for discussion or reinterpretation. We are commanded to rebuild the broken down walls. Because as Yeshayahu prophesies, Yahweh will always guide you. He will always satisfy your needs in the desert or the wilderness. He will always renew the strength in your body, so that you will be like a fruitful, well-watered garden, like a spring of life whose water never dries up. And because of that, you will rebuild the ancient ruins. You will raise up the foundations, or Torah, from ages past, and be called the repairer of broken walls, centuries of lies, restorer of streets to live in, the way. Make no mistake, our task as Messianic believers is to be fully committed to rolling up our sleeves as apprentices and being committed to learning and taking part in the family restoration business.
Amen.
But isn't all this just history? Doesn't it have any relevance to modern society? Aren't you being legalistic? Aren't you naive and idealistic? Isn't it just too hard to follow these Old Testament, overly strict guidelines? I mean, after all, I do have real commitments. I do lead an extremely busy life. After all, I already set aside half a day a week already. Isn't that enough? What more does He want? It's simple. Obey or don't obey. Follow His timetable or yours. You choose. Don't just focus on the negatives and make obedience really complicated. Just follow the two-step plan that makes it really, really simple. Step 1. Practice listening to Him as you spend time with Him, and ask for a regular checkup of spiritual hearing. 2. When you do hear Him, obey everything He says to you. Full stop, end of discussion. As in, pray, which is a conversation that includes listening and talking. Hear clearly and obey. Isn't He the King of Kings after all? If your boss told you to do so, would you say, well, I'm not really sure. I'm a bit busy at the moment. I'll have to think about it and get back to you when I can fit it in. I don't think so. In fact, compliance won't even be an issue if you've redeemed and follow His guidelines. Because the desire to rebel or disobey will already have been dealt with. Our sense of identity and who we are is forged from a single, united, undivided relationship with Abba and one another. We are one single family of brothers and sisters related by blood. Not misguided religious traditions, Jewish or Gentile. As Torah says, you yourselves are our letter of recommendation written on our hearts, known and read by everyone. You make it clear that you are a letter from the Messiah placed in our care. Written not with ink, but by the Spirit of the living God. not on stone tablets, but on human hearts. So on Sukkot, as we celebrate both his birth among us and his return among us at the same time of abundant harvest, this time of abundant fruitfulness, as we labour together in his vineyard, we celebrate and look forward to a time when all nations will flow to Zion every year. A time when everyone will bow the knee or surrender and submit willingly or unwillingly as they acknowledge him as the true Messiah, the true King of this whole world. Sadly, at that time, many will still reject him, even after the truth is made obvious to them. It's a choice. They have a choice to say yes or no. But they will all know. They won't be able to say, well, we never knew. But they still have that choice to make. So let both physical and spiritual Israel in our shared commonwealth say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, as we carry out his plans and purposes while looking and listening intently for his promised return. So Shalom, Messianic Mishpacha, or Redeemer's family. Shalom.
Shalom.